Hello everyone, welcome back to the Java tutorial series. In this video, we will focus on encapsulation in Java. So, this is one of the most important object-oriented programming concepts, encapsulation. Okay, so we will understand what encapsulation is, why it is used, how to implement it, and also we will see the practical examples. So, let's get started. So, what is encapsulation? Encapsulation is the process of combining data, also known as variables, and the methods that operate on the data into a single unit. So, wrapping data and methods into a single unit, what we call the single unit? Class. So, inside class, we will be having data and methods. Okay, so I see here we have properties, right? Properties and behaviors. So this property is what? Data. And this behavior is what? Method. So class has data and methods. So wrapping up of this data and method into a single entity, which is called class. So this process of wrapping of data and method into single entity is encapsulation. And we are encapsulating these things into single entity. Okay. So it is a process of combining data and methods into a single entity, which we call it as class. Why do we do these things? Because it helps protect an object's internal state and ensures that data is accessed only in controlled manner. So what it will do, it protects object data. Data means whatever properties we are having, that will be protected. And how can we achieve this encapsulation, wrapping up of data and methods? Using class. Okay, now let's think about why do we need encapsulation. Without encapsulation, anyone can directly access our object data, right? Access and modify it, which may lead to invalid or inconsistent values. So let's say we have one class student, and let's say in this class we have data, let's say int age, and we have some more. Okay, so for now focus on int age. So this is what data property, and if we are not using encapsulation, then anyone can directly modify this object class, this object data, which may lead to invalid. Okay, so encapsulation allows us to control how this data should be accessed and modified, so making our application more secure, maintainable and reliable. So if we use encapsulation, how we will use encapsulation? We will use private keyword so that no one can modify it and access it. We will use getter and setter method. So this getter and setter method will be manipulating this variable, and the other class member will call this getter and setter if they want to manipulate this variable, and this will be public. So that's how we achieve encapsulation. So this is like controlled manner. That's what it is written, controlled access, better security. Why? Because we cannot directly access this variable. We have to go through getter and setter to manipulate or use this variable. Easy maintenance, improve code reusability. Okay, so that's why we need encapsulation. Now we will see how to achieve encapsulation. How do we achieve encapsulation? Okay, we said that no one can access directly the instance variable. So class student int age. So this variable now can be accessed with anyone. Why? Because the scope is not private. Now we want to achieve encapsulation. It should be secure. It should be in controlled manner. Okay, so for that reason we will add private to the instance variable. So that's what it is written. Declare instance variable as private. See, we've declared. Now private means this variable can be accessed within the class only. Now what if there is another class xyz, and from this class, inside this class, I want to manipulate the data of age, but since it is private, this can be accessed within the class only, but I want to use the age outside the class, some other class xyz. How do we do that? So we will be having getter and setter method inside this class student, and which will be public. Public means it can be called from anywhere. So from xyz class, we cannot directly invoke age. We will call getter, setter. We'll call these methods, and what this method will do, this method will manipulate with this instance variable. So we are not calling directly age, we are calling getter and setter is using this variable. Why getter and setter is using? Because it is private scope, and within the class, this instance variable is available within the class, and getter and setter are present within the class. So getter and setter can utilize this variable, and we can utilize getter and setter outside the class. Why? Because we have mentioned public scope for getter and setter. So that's how we achieve encapsulation. That's why in the next point it is written provide public getter methods. Provide public setter methods. Why public? So that we can call these methods outside the class, outside the student class, somewhere in the other class. Okay. So encapsulation is achieved by declaring instance variable as private. Since private variables cannot be accessed directly from outside the class, that is xyz, we provide public getter method. Why public getter method? To read data, and why setter method? To update the data, that is age. Now let's see example in IntelliJ for better clarity. Okay, what we are studying, encapsulation. So I will define one class, will create one class student. Okay, now in this class I will define private instance variable, let's say string name, another instance variable that is private, int name. Why private? Sorry, int age. Why private? Because to achieve encapsulation, for security, no member can directly access this variable age and name. Okay, so how they can achieve this thing, age and name? How they can use this variable? Using what? Using getter and setter, and that should be public. That's public means they can access outside this class. Okay, so we will use getter and setter. Public void the setter method, let's say public void set name, and in this set name what we will provide? Parameter. So whatever name we provide, that will be set in the instance variable. This dot name equals to name. Okay, likewise we will set the age, public void set age. What will provide int? Okay, int age. Now this dot age, that is instance variable age, equals to what? Parameter, method parameter variable. Okay, and what about getter method? We'll write getter method. Public getter method will return public int get age. What it will return? Simply age. Okay, now public string get name. What it will return? Return name. So these are the getter and setter method, and public is the scope access modifier for all these getter setter method, so that other classes can use this getter and setter method in order to utilize these hidden variables, that is name and age. Why hidden? Because it is defined as private. So encapsulation means binding of data and methods into single entity, that is class. This process is called encapsulation. So here the variable name and age are declared as private. They cannot be accessed directly from outside the class student. Instead, public getter and setter methods are provided to safely read and update these values. Okay. So let's utilize this method getter and setter in order to read and update these values. So let's go to main method. We will create one object of a student. Okay, student equals to new student, and what we will do, we will student dot set, we will call the set method. Okay, we'll set the name Vicky. Now we will again call the object reference set age. This time we'll set the age 20. Okay, so we have utilized the setter method to set the name and age. Name and age are what? Private numbers, but still we are able to set their values. How? Using setter method. Similarly, I will print directly. Similarly, we will get the name and we'll get the student dot get age using getter method. We cannot directly call the name and age since it is declared as private. So we are using getter method to get the value of those variables. Let's run and see the output. See, with the help of getter and setter method, we are able to fetch the data of Wiki and 20, fetch and also set. So we have first updated the data and then we are fetching, that is getting the data with the help of getters. So in the main method, what we are doing, we have created one object, one student object, and used the setter method to assign values. Okay, then we have used the getter method to retrieve and display these values. So notice that we have not used anywhere in the code that private variables directly. What are the private variables? Name and age. Here see, private name and age. Nowhere we have directly called the name and age, used name and age. We have utilized that name and age with the help of setter and getter method. So what are the advantages of encapsulation? Encapsulation offers several advantages. It hides sensitive data. Using private keyword, we are hiding those instance variables, hiding those data. How we are hiding? Using private keyword. And it provides controlled access. With the help of getter and setter only, we can utilize the private numbers. Since we are doing data hiding, security is there, better security, okay? And we can use validation in the setter method. Okay? We can provide some validation condition inside a block and then we can do the setting up. Okay, this dot age equals to age, like that. So we can do this thing in setter method. Flexible implementation. Okay. So it also let us change the internal implementation without affecting the other parts of the program. And it makes applications easier to maintain. So these are the advantages of encapsulation. Okay. Now we will see some real life example so that we have the better analogy. So let's say we have an ATM machine. Okay. And user cannot directly access or modify internal banking system, right? So they simply enter the PIN and perform operation like withdrawing cash or checking their balance. So this kind of operation user will perform. So the internal data remains secure and hidden. Okay. So authentication happens internally. We are just providing PIN and authentication is happening internally. We are not knowing what the process is going on. Okay. So this is like data hiding and users can only perform allowed operations. So this is like controlled access. Here what data hiding. Internally what is happening we are not knowing, right? And here only allowed operations are like withdraw, check balance, those things. So this is what controlled access. Okay. So let's summarize what we have learned so far. So encapsulation means wrapping up of data and methods into a single entity called class. And we make variables private and access them using getter and setter methods. So this provides data hiding, security, validation, better maintainability, those things. So that's all for this video. I hope this tutorial helped you understand the encapsulation in Java. Thanks for watching and I will see you in the next video.